Let me in. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. The time is 7:00 p.m. I'd like to call the regular Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Myself, Mike Cappers, present.
Donnie Kerr, present.
Chris Dubeck.
Public comment on agenda items, 2 minutes per person and 14 minutes per topic. Do we have anybody here for that?
Anybody online?
Anybody online have any public comment? I'd like to ask, since we have Ellers here, I'd like to ask to move the agenda around and have 9A, then 8A, then 9C in that order. People going back to their normal order. Anybody
Say
opposed?
that again.
9A, 8A, then 9C.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
If do you want to remove the podium?
However you guys want to do it, I consider.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Recorder sent me over there. So
Thank you.
Very nice. Human voice. Great. I've got a copy of that.
Thank you.
The big hazard.
I know. All right, well, thanks for having us. Again, Josh Lowe from Ellers, been before you guys a couple of times on a variety of items in the last year or a couple of years. Tonight our topic is the extension of the taxable note from 2020 for tax record district number 5. Right? So just a little bit of background on how we got to this place. In 2020, we executed a taxable general obligation note for a little over $1 million to acquire property for tax increment district number 5.
Not connected up to the server, so you can.
That was the first expenditure that we took on for TID 5. That was a new district that created in 2020. So this is the first thing we did to get that district up and running. That was done at taxable at the time because that's what we have to do to acquire development for private purposes. So if we were doing it just for the village, a public purpose for normal village business, we could have done it tax exempt. But in this case, we had to do it as a taxable borrowing.
Can you share it on yours?
I can't, I don't have it on mine.
All right, so the structure of that one, really the way that we set it up was to have interest-only payments for the first 3 years, 2020 through 2023, with all the principal being due this year, 2024. And the reason that we did it that way at the time was to buy more time for development to begin in a tax increment district and really have that plan start to flesh out a little bit, right? So the reason that we're here tonight to talk about the refinancing of this is because the maturity for that occurs on March 1st of this year. So time is up and we need to make a new plan to extend this for the life of the remaining life of the tax increment district. Okay.
How long is the tax increment district?
This one goes through 2041.
So we're talking 23 to 2041.
Yep. So for a state trust fund loan, this is a very well recognized program. I'm on the second page, by the way. A very well used, very common program in the state of Wisconsin. This is all through the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. And the application process for this is really quite simple. Basically, any entity in Wisconsin, municipal entity who needs funding can apply for this. This is not like bank financing where they have a credit approval process. Almost everyone gets it. It's a very easy application. It's already in the works to move this forward, at least the preliminary part of that. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So the reason that the state trust fund loan is a good fit compared to bank financing is because we're going to be able to use the full 20 years of the tax increment district for it. If we did bank financing, they'd probably only want us to do 10 years. That's usually about the limit that they want to go, this kind of thing. So the state trust fund loan, STFL, is probably the best suited option for this. The other nice thing about it, this is another feature of the program, is that it's prepayable any year between January 1st and August 31st. You just need 30 days notice. So if the tax increment district winds up doing really well, we can accumulate enough funds to prepay it in whatever increments we choose during any given year.
Is there prepayment penalties?
No. So very helpful. Administering this, as I mentioned, the application process is already in flight. So what we had to do was just do a one-page application. It kind of works in multiple phases. Phase one is sending in the one pager that we sent to them, which is basically village contact information, the amount we want and how much time we want it for. Okay. Once the state receives that back, that basically locks you into the process and the current interest rate, with it just gone down, actually. So that's really helpful. Okay. So that will happen. Once that happens and they receive their paperwork, and I think they're actually sending it back already, they'll send you an application packet back with requests some various information. Pretty simple. We can help you fill that out and submit it. You'll just say there the amount that you want, the date that you want it to close, and then there's a form in there of a resolution for you to pass at probably the next meeting that we have. Okay, that's basically it. And at that point, once you're done with that, we package that up. The resolution's been done. We'll send that packet back to them, and then you'll receive your funds at the date that you specify. Okay. And then that's when you'll actually see the amortization schedule. So on the next page, what I've got is a sample amortization schedule based on the current rate and the amount that we're proposing to take out.
Have we received any funds in TID 5 so far? Nothing.
No.
Are we anticipating to receive any this year?
We won't until 2025.
And that's on the, once the assessment comes through on that. What about the monies that they paid in impact fees and stuff like that? Does that go into the TID?
That goes to impact fee.
That goes to impact, okay. I didn't know if that impact fees was in TID or not.
No,
So
The purchase of that?
the purchase was the 1 million.
No, but I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm still, didn't they purchased some land too, didn't they?
Mhm.
They're not making any payments on that, I thought there was some money that came in for that.
Yep.
Okay, so there was money that come in,
yeah,
so,
not tax dollars.
no, so was there any monies coming into TID 5?
There's money in TID 5 for the purchase, but I believe it was set up for payback to them as they go along. If I'm not mistaken.
No, we've talked about that with you're talking about Andrea and the development agreement.
Mhm.
I know we have that set up for the TID we created this past fall.
Okay.
I can't say with certainty with, is it
I thought there
Growing
was a-
Wings?
Yeah, I thought there was a payback.
Yeah, we'd have to look at that agreement again.
We had some incentives, but I don't think this was done in a similar way because when for the new taxing district, TID 6, with Capstone, they acquired land. They gave you 750,000, and then that was going to go back to the incentive that we paid for them for like the per housing,
Right.
per house created incentive.
But TID 5, there was I thought there was a certain amount of money that come in, and then there was tax increment financing on the front end of that, right?
There are incentives that are pledged for the Growing Wings development, but
Right.
that's going to start. I got it here on the.
So there's been no actual money coming into TID is what I'm at, I guess.
You're right. You're right. So that will start.
I thought there was, that's why I was asking the question.
So
Yep.
regardless, it's not enough to cover the loan.
Not saying it's gonna cover the loan, I was just asking if there was money coming in.
Yeah.
That's all. Cause it's not mentioned in here.
Acquiring the property that Growing Wings was on, that was the 1 point.
That's what this borrowing was for.
And then don't we have to borrow money for the utilities that we did to annex?
We already did that, 2023 loan that we did.
Yeah.
I think for.
That was-
Josh got a sheet on everything you guys are talking.
Okay.
Just
We
like
got
the
the
next
next
slide.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
you guys are
Ahead of
hitting
the.
on it, you're right on it.
Yeah.
You're all right on it.
So anyway, I just wanted to show the debt service here, and you're gonna see this, how it embeds into the cash flow in just a minute, okay? So you'll note that this one actually goes through 2040, and even though a minute ago I told you that the district goes through 2041, that's because it's,
20 years.
right. But then you actually wind up getting an extra year tacked on to your, districts when they get created. The next page, I just wanted to quickly go over the general obligation capacity. This new loan doesn't actually change your capacity because it was the existing note was already embedded in that. So just visually, I just wanted you to know that you still have enough money for future projects, and this really won't factor into that at all. Okay. All right, so the next page is the one we've all been waiting for, the TID 5 actual cash flow. And what we're trying to do here is show what we know now with our existing development and our existing expenses that we know, and then showing in another column the additional development that will be needed to pencil out for these existing expenses, right? So moving left to right, we've got the Growing Wings one in there now to be constructed this year, and that will start generating revenue in 2 years in 2026. And that's the way all development is done. And new construction is done in Wisconsin and probably lots of other places too. To create it 1 year, assess the next, and in the second year, that's when you start to see revenue off of those projects, right?
And that goes right into the TID, not to the.
Yep.
You know.
Exactly. So that's where we are now. The next column over, I'm actually going to skip that for a second because that's all the future stuff that will need to happen. So I'm actually going to go right over to the expenses and just show what's listed there. So the first column there is the 2020 taxable note for $1,016,000. So what we show there are just the interest payments that are due, and those are being charged to the TID. As you can see, there's been no revenue coming in to offset that. So right now we're just, creating a minor deficit year over year due to those expenses. Right next to that, that's the projected.
You're gonna have to explain right next to me a little bit when I'm not following where you're saying. On this sheet here, you're saying 2020 all the way across?
Oh, sorry. I'm on the expenses side.
Yep.
Right here.
Okay.
Right. So this first column here.
So you're in the 2022 expenses?
Nope, this is the 2020 note that I'm actually referring to. That header where it says 2022 is actually incorrect. That should say the 2020 taxable note. That's a typo on my side.
That tripped me up on that. I was like, okay.
You got it.
Okay, so that's it. Okay.
Yep. So the first two expenditures for that are shown here, I'm just advancing to 2023. Was $12,598 for interest this year, or I guess last year in 2023.
But it's already showing a cumulative balance on the far right corner of 281,069. Is that right?
It's 266,971. That's because the TID is already advancing dollars and taking on some expenses since it was created in 2020. So those are the end of year.
The 266,971 is from your audit as of the end of December 31, 22. And then the 281 is our projection of what it'll be at the end of 23. You guys don't have that audited numbers yet.
So you're basically 14,098 going against that, right?
That's right.
Which was the interest payment on this note.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually there's some administrative expenses charged to the TIDs each year.
Yep.
Okay, so the end of this year, 2023, we're looking at basically a deficit coming out of the whole 281,069.
That's right.
That was already debt that was accumulated against the TID.
Yep.
Okay. I'm with you now.
Okay, perfect. Feel free to slow me down at any time. I've seen these cash flows so many times, I just kind of start talking about them. Like you guys have seen them every day, and you only see them once every 6 months or something like that. So these are great questions. All right, so moving left to right in the expenses category, we've got the 2024 state trust fund loan now layered in there. So that will start payments in 2025. To the right of that, we've got the bonds that we just took out over the summer, right? And the first payment for that is going to be $9,166 this year coming up. To the right of that, you've got the Growing Wings development incentive that's going to start in a few years too, right?
And just to talk back, Mike, you had mentioned the infrastructure that's in that 2023 bond.
Right.
That when we, I think a couple $100,000 for the TID, that's where we paid for it from that bond issue.
Yeah, I think the total amount was around 300, 350, something like that for those utility purposes for that.
Not bad at all.
But the only 9,000 of that is TID expense, correct? Out of that $4 million in 2023 bonds?
Yeah,
For
because we
that
had,
year.
Right, for that first year, right?
yeah,
And then it goes 15 and whatever, on the projections, but.
right. There were multiple purposes in that bond that we did. Some of it was for streets projects, and then, there were TID 3 projects and lots of different things working there. So this is only the TID 5 portion. All right. So you can see that those kind of extend down throughout the life of the district. Okay. So now I want to go back to that column to the left under additional development. All right. Those are the first 5 years ongoing of what we anticipated coming from the project plan that we did back in 2020. So at this point, those are all still speculative, right? But I will say that we anticipated a total of about 25 million entirely for TID 5. So what we have right here is about half of that, right? So we still have additional costs coming into the future, but we're also still expecting additional development
I'm
coming
not
into the
seeing where
future.
your half 25 million is at.
Um,
Are you talking about the additional developments here in green?
Yeah.
yep, there's additional development there, plus the growing wings gets you about 13 million.
By 2030?
Yep, by 2030,
And you were anticipating
25 million total.
25 million total by now
No, throughout the entire life of the
for the
district. And the
total
project.
TID?
Yep.
2041.
I think you blow that away.
Okay. We hope so. We certainly hope so. All right. So, I mean, that's great for the long term. You know, that's what gets us to a positive cash flow by the last year of the district.
The 13 million. We need the 13 million.
Yeah, the 13 million to get you there, right? So that's what we need in order to get you to the positive by the last year, right? So that's usually what we consider to be a viable tax increment district. But we still need a plan to get you between now and then, because you're going to be racking up some negative balances each year between them, right? So just because, you know, after the end of a 20-year plan, you're positive by $1, doesn't mean there aren't going to be some bumps in between. So that's what we need to figure out over the next coming years. For example, by the year 2024, you're not going to have any revenue coming in this year for the district, but you're going to have 119,000 in expenses, right?
That's next year.
Sorry, next year, 23,000 this year with no cash, and 119,000 next year. This is all shown in the annual balance, second from the right. Okay. So how are we going to work that out? We need to think about any other sources of funds that you might have, which we can talk about on the next page, advancing to this district, because someone's going to have to pay these bills for these debt instruments that are coming out, right? These can all be paid back over time from the TID. You can pay back your advance with interest, so you can make whole. There's still going to be a near-term deficit. We got to figure that out.
What, Josh, what can the TID all cover? Is it just the utilities to the property, or how does that work?
It's pretty much any utilities to the property, streets, roads. I wish I had a copy of the project plan on, but I think it was really at the time the land acquisition, some utilities, might be some streets, and development incentives were the only things that were in there. TIF law allows you to do a variety of different things. They all have to be under the aegis of economic development. So you can't put, like, you know, a new village hall or something like that. It's not supposed to be for police or fire, but it can have some, you know, recreational facilities, things like that too, that can really be seen as, you know, an anchor of new development. So it can be utilities, infrastructure, streets, lighting, recreational amenities,
Incentive.
yeah, incentives.
Did you have something in mind, Mike, specifically that you were wondering about?
Yeah, but I can't speak to it right now.
More of a negotiation situation?
Correct.
Yeah. We've done plenty of presentations around the state about tax increment district 101, stuff like that. I can grab a slide and send it to you just to start giving you some ideas.
And if you do need to bring us in to explain it, you know, we're happy to do that in either a closed session, or we do it a lot in terms of working directly with developers or as part of a team representing the village. So if those kind of questions come up, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, perfect. I have a few questions.
Yeah, no problem, anytime. So the next page, I just really want to talk about potential sources of funds to help bridge those annual deficits.
Right, because in 2024, we're going to be about 424,000 in the hole.
Right.
We start generating from revenue.
I mean, I would worry less about the cumulative balance at that point than just how to bridge the annual. So right now you're already in
Well,
negative
the annual
266.
was 119.
Right. So that's the issue that you'd want to solve for now, and then next year and the year after that, because you're not
Where's the
expecting.
negative balance? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Where the negative balance of 423,537, if that's not adding the 119 to it. So like the coming out of that would be a negative balance of 304. Is that we're borrowing that from someplace, right? We
Sorry,
just need to figure out where it is on this sheet, right?
I think you've been making advances from the village's general fund.
Mhm.
And so that if you look at the top number in the cumulative balance, the 266,000, those dollars have been advanced since the TID was created from the general fund of the village to the tax increment district fund to cover. It's a combination of some of the debt service on that land purchase, and I imagine other infrastructure costs that have occurred. And that might have been what you were thinking too, Mike, is, you know, we borrowed for some of the costs that you did, I think this last year, right? Josh was in there, but there was some costs before that as well.
Right.
And those were internally funded with advances from your savings account to pay for that. We want that paid back. It's just.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that's no different than what we're gonna borrow for, or we're basically taking it out of this pocket to pay for it. And we're gonna put it back in this pocket once we got the money for it, right?
That's right.
So we've already taken it out of the general fund pocket to the tune of $266,000, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so that eventually will need to get paid back, right? Does that get paid back with interest?
Yes.
Can or
If that's your policy.
It's up to you, but it certainly can, as long as we got enough money built coming from the TID to pay it back, you can, yeah.
We would usually recommend that, unless there's, I mean, when was the last time your community said we don't want any interest at all?
It's pretty rare.
Pretty rare, I'd say. I mean, certainly over time, you know, inflation is gonna eat away at that, you know, it's time value of money.
Well, it's general
wanna
fund
return
money that could be spent or something else is what I'm
Right.
looking at, is that if that was taken from general funds, it could be, you know, utilized. And if it's got interest, we could say, oh, this is what we'd like to do with that. Roads, bridges, whatever, you know, as long as we know what we got coming in.
100%.
Now you want us to figure out where we're gonna borrow the money from, or on this page of sources of funds?
Doesn't need to be figured out right now.
Okay,
So we still have between now and the time,
is that on an annual basis?
yes, or at least until the TID can pay for its cost itself, right? So once
Right.
development really starts flowing and then you don't have to bring from anywhere else, that's what you do. So here are just a couple of examples that we pulled out from your audit. You know, you have a variety of different funds that can be used for different sources or for different reasons. And the number one is your unassigned fund balance, right? So this is something that we really want to monitor. This is basically the savings account for the village that can be used for any such purposes. Not something we want to dip down too low, because the whole point of it is to have it for reserve for other things. So, you know, we don't want to use it all. But it is a key option for there. We also have the bridge fund. And so the number that's here, this 476, this is actually less what we used for the Main Street Bridge project that we just did, and was also supplemented by the bond that we took out over the summer. So I think it was about 1.1, somewhere around here in the audit. So your 2023, it'll show this reduced number somewhere around here, because I just netted off what that project was supposed to cost at the time.
But on an annual basis, we'd sit down and say, okay, we gotta pay 119,204 in interest payments on TID 5, and we'd like to allocate it from XYZ, or for them, and just say bridge fund, right?
That's right.
So we pull it from, borrow from bridge fund at this amount of money, that'd be a resolution, I'm assuming, right?
You do by resolution?
I think we do it as part of the budget, wouldn't we,
Yeah.
Andrea? So we would highlight if there was gonna be a shortfall, just as you described. And that's why we want to bring it up tonight, just to kind of prep you guys that, because it takes a while for the development to get going, got to deal with the costs in between. I think that when we get to the 25 budget, which is really the first one that's a major payment, that 119, we would want to get something on the books to say, how is Andrea going to pay for that? Which one is she going to take it from to manage that?
Because the 2024, 23,264, did we talk about that in budget time?
Mhm.
So where would we come up with that money, that shortfall? Or don't we address it now? We address it later.
We want to address it.
The one that jumped out to Josh and I is, I don't know if you mentioned that we're expecting TID 4 to close, and go ahead, Josh, you talk about
Yeah,
that.
so when we close TID 4, there's always a remaining cash balance, you know, so like for this one, there's gonna be a remaining cash balance of 178. The same applied for TID 4 when you close it, so there was a balance there of, you know, I guess it was about 123,000,
Yep.
something like
I
that.
thought that was already dispersed.
Well, some of it's gonna come back, some of it came back to the village, and that's what we think is around the 45,000, right? So that chunk of change, whatever that was,
So there was the village borrowed some to TID 4 that they're gonna get back.
No, it was just the remaining funds from TID four. So whatever's there gets split up amongst the taxing jurisdictions. So the county gets a cut,
Right,
and the school district gets a cut, and the tech college gets a very small cut.
so that was
You
for
guys get about
2023, is that what we're talking about, 2023?
No, but it's money you're collecting this year.
Right, so that was the last year of increment from TID four when we closed it last year, TID six.
All right,
So those are just a couple of pots of
that's
funds.
probably why the E is on the 23,000, because there's that additional revenue coming in for TID 4 this year. No big heartburn there, we could probably just borrow from that money and it'll.
Yep, the money
Yeah,
comes
in the
right
next
to your
year.
general fund, once it gets dispersed, and then you guys could use it to pay for the shortfall this year.
And then, the last thing that I wanted to mention is levying for the debt service. So this will be general obligation debt, just like if you did a bank note or a bond or something like that. We can help you fill out your levy limit worksheet and plan to levy for those dollars if you don't want to take it from these other funds. Or for whatever reason you prefer to levy for it, then borrow it internally, do that kind of thing. Usually the point of the tax increment district is to keep it off the levy. But in short-term purposes like this, sometimes you have to just pull different levers. Those are all policy decisions, right? There is no real right way to do it or wrong way to do it. If you want to keep your fund balance where they are for some other future emergency, you can do that. You can levy for
What's
1
the
year, you can stop
advantageous,
doing it for the
what's the
other.
reason or the advantage to doing something like that versus just, like you were saying, we take the money and borrow it from one bucket and pay the other? What's the advantage to a levy on it? Because you're paying you're paying interest and everything else versus you're already kind of borrowing from yourself to pay yourself back interest, right?
Yeah, you could certainly do it that way. I guess the only reason I would say levy for it is because you don't have any of these other funds and you really, really don't want to tap into them because you have some other use for it. If you have village policy that said there's no reason why I can ever go below 25% of our expenditures or something like that, and you didn't want to violate that kind of thing, then.
But there's nothing like that would require us, there's no triggers that, currently that we have.
I don't think you guys do have a policy on
We
that.
do
do you?
have a
25%?
financial management plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think it was 25%,
Yep,
yeah,
which is the unassigned fund balance, which you got a little room, but not a ton of room to draw that down.
Right, so we're not hitting them triggers yet.
I would say you're not hitting those
Okay.
triggers. Yep.
so the other thing, when we did your bond issuance a couple of months ago, we had the rating agency, right, who gave a full review of the village's finances and economy, and you guys got a nice rating. One of the key things they look at to give you that nice rating is your fund balance, one, and that you're adhering to your policies. So we're not planning another competitive issuance where we go back to them and do another rating anytime soon. So even if you were below that, you have enough time to get back up to it. But that's just like a thing you want to monitor throughout the year. Once you get your audit, look at it. Are we in compliance? Yes, box checked. And just keeping it in your view, I think is the right way to go. So anyway, long and short of it is you have funds to meet those gaps right now. I think that most people in your shoes would say the levy is the last thing that we want to do. Because you don't want to have to go back to your citizens and say, we need an extra $50,000 from you this year. It's not the worst thing, but these are all policy choices. Then
Here's a question.
That's what we got.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Why, have we looked at, different debts, to go up in for bonding rather than the state trust fund? And the reason I say that is 6% is a pretty strong number for 15 years, 17 years, 20 years, if you look at the full term of that. We're not paying 6% on the bonds that we just got last year. Is there a chance that we might be, kind of saying, yeah, this is great because we can get it and we can look down the road and yada, 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 but is it gonna cost us more money to do this versus the looking to go out and bond for it?
Yeah, I think that my reaction to that would be certainly the interest rates aren't as good compared to a competitive issue that we did earlier this year. When you do that, you're not going to have prepayment flexibility until year 8 or 9. So that's one reason. Two, the cost of issuance are really low for this. We put in, I think, 10,000. By the time you have $1 million issue, then you start tacking on our costs. We probably have to get it rated again. So there's an extra 15,000 we get bond attorney. That really just generates higher costs relative to the amount of the actual project you're borrowing for. So that winds up making it infeasible.
The biggest though, I agree with Josh, the biggest issue here though is we can't borrow tax exempt for this.
Yeah.
So when we did those projects, in the fall, those projects all qualify as governmental purpose and we can borrow tax exempt. And this borrowing is not, because it's a business purpose, you're buying and selling land to promote economic development. Tax law puts it into a different category, taxable borrowing. So just to give you a sense, I talked to a couple of people because it's good timing your question. We're looking at a taxable borrowing for another community right now too.
That's a different animal altogether.
The interest rates are totally
Yeah,
different.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and
You just said that, I'm like, oh, well, now I can. see
Yeah,
why.
that's the biggest
So
difference.
you're probably talking about 1 point higher actually going into
If-
that.
if
You're
not
looking
more.
at 7.5% in the tax exempt.
Yeah, one quote I got today was more in the 7 to 8%, and then another one was right around 6%, but those were for a 5-year loan, not for a.
Well, it's good to explain that then, because I was looking at 6%, I'm going, God, I thought we could do a better job than that, but
Yeah.
now we're not borrowing tax exempt, which throws us into a different,
Correct.
different kettle of fish.
So what if prime goes down to like 3 or 4% in the next 3 or 4 years? Is there any way to redo the loan at some point, or does it just stay at flat 6 for the?
So that'll stay where it is until you do something else. You can't refinance a state trust fund loan with another state trust fund loan. If you do go out to the local bank or something like that, or package it together with some other project you probably have in the next couple of years, then you can refinance it with that. But you would not be able to do if we went out to the competitive securities market, because then you're going to be locked out probably between years 8 or 9.
In theory, if prime drops down to 3%, development is gonna skyrocket and you're gonna have the thing all filled up with development and paid off.
Yeah.
In theory.
But this note, the state trust fund loan, every year between January 1st and September 1st, the village has the option to prepay in whole or in part. So you'll have that option through the whole term. The biggest issue though is that issue is development, and how fast and how much development can we get in the TID. The more development at higher value, the faster we get it, the better this cash flow ends up looking.
So we just talked about, just caught up with him in the hall before he left, and he mentioned to me the large multi-unit, multifamily development that is being worked out right now. So obviously that would be the best case scenario where you really have all the development you need to fund you all the way through, which doesn't mean that, 5 years from now when interest rates will get low again, if they do, we can't refinance at that time. Certainly, we would want to use every bullet in our gun that we have. But the key to a tax increment district is obviously the development and not really the interest rates. If you get a 100-unit development going in there, that problem's solved.
Fair enough.
So that's it. The last formal slide that we have, I think really tonight is to really just give you a heads up for the state trust fund loan that will be seen at your next meeting. So you really have an understanding of what's going on for that. So
This coming to the full board, or is this gonna come from a recommendation from finance?
We can make a recommendation.
I'm just asking,
Yeah,
is it
what's-
norm?
Andrew was talking about that application at the beginning of our discussion. That would be on the agenda on the 16th, and it would be for approval by the full board. That gets the process going that Josh was talking about. So that's what's gonna be on the agenda on the 16th.
Well, there needs to be more recommended here
Yep.
today, right?
I think that would be great.
Okay, I'll make a motion to recommend that we move forward with this state trust fund refinance.
Motion from Donnie. Second,
Second.
further discussion? Good, none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Thank you, Josh, and then,
Just one question on that too, then, do we have to address? And I guess, I know you said we can talk about it, but do we have to address the shortfall for 2023 now, or is that something we wait for later on in the year? Because if we have that money coming in, we might as well target that from the bid for, if it's gonna be coming in, and then we don't have to cross that bridge at a later date.
yeah, that's an interesting question because your 2023 payments were already made last year. So soon the auditor is going to come and kind of help you work out the paperwork and figure out, what will probably wind up happening is that will just go to your cumulative balance.
But
Increasing.
2024 is is what I was referencing to, is the 23,000 in 2024 shortfall that's gonna come up.
Oh, sure.
That's
So
not
that's,
the 20, that's why, you got 2023, but I'm talking 23,000.
got it.
Doing 24.
Okay,
I'd rather get that out of the way and just get the recommendation out there that when the TID floor, I'd make a recommendation that the TID floor closes at that 23,000 shortfall, or the TID floor be borrowed from that money.
Is that a motion?
Yes. As long as we're sufficient on that, right?
sure. I don't know if you, when we submitted the paperwork and the auditors let's get like 180 days or something to do that after we did the TID foreclosure. Are we
We
connected with them?
haven't yet.
Yeah, okay.
But then we know what we're doing, right?
The TID is closed, just so it's just final accounting.
Yeah, it's the
Yep.
money coming in.
Yep.
Once the money's there, then that money can be borrowed to pay the shortfall for
Exactly.
2024.
And that won't need to be a one that's borrowed, because that will be a lump sum of cash that you just received. So you won't have to charge it against another account that needs to be.
Right, but the
repaid.
TID four money could go to another area, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm saying is if it went to general
Can I
fund,
earmark for the TID 5 short?
I want the shortfall earmarked and the balance figured where we go with that at the end, once we get the final audits up.
I think you can make an amendment to your first motion, but I don't think you can make a new motion since it's not on the agenda, correct? You can make an amendment to,
I'll just put it as consensus of the committee.
Are we talking 23,000 coming from that 45 roughly?
yeah, when that TID four closes, that the money gets earmarked, reallocated.
Makes sense to me. We use one pit to pay for the other.
So amendment made and seconded by you, and all in favor, aye.
All right,
Okay. Thanks again, and then you have,
John.
John's gonna do the
Yeah.
impact fee needs study.
Right, so.
thanks, Josh.
Yeah,
Yep,
real,
thank you.
real quick, guys, our group, but for the finance committee, our coworker, John Cameron, I see his smiling face up on the screen now. John is our expert on impact fees. He does a lot of the studies and reviews of studies and amendments to studies related to impact fees. He is out of our Milwaukee area, Waukesha office. Josh and I, Wisconsin work, but we are out of our Roseville, Minnesota, most working on the west side of Wisconsin. So he's our expert. We wanted him to be a part of the discussion, hopefully be able to research to answer any questions you guys have about the impact fees.
Perfect.
Yeah, nope. Thank you very much for allowing me to be present virtually this evening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mike, we could either do any questions you guys have, or John can talk a little bit about. I think Andrew, you provided us the existing report. And what might be involved for work to update that, reassess the current fees, reassess the current projects. And wherever you guys, if you have questions, I'm sure we can go right into those, or John, if you want to introduce it, either way, whatever.
Yeah,
works best.
it's whatever your preference is. Just let me know what you'd like, how you'd like us to handle it.
We'll start at the beginning and end at the end.
Got it.
And then, can you also share your screen with us, John?
Sure, I sure can.
Great.
Oh, it says it's host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
Working on it now.
Okay.
You should be able to.
Okay. And really all I'm gonna do is share your existing impact fee study. So this is just your existing impact fee study, which I think was last updated in 2010. It looks like it's been there's been a series of updates from when it was initially adopted. So when you go through updating impact fees, which really, there's nothing in statute that says how often you have to update these impact fees, but I think a general rule of thumb is roughly every 5 years, or as conditions change in terms of population projections compared to what you had in the the original impact fee study or land use projections, particularly if you were planning on something noteworthy, or vice versa. You now all of a sudden have some major development coming forward that you think is going to really dramatically alter your future population projections. So to maybe take a step backwards, when we talk about impact fees, just so we're all on the same page, impact fees, as defined under state statute, are one-time fees imposed on new development, generally paid at the issuance of a building permit, and they are meant to recover the proportionate share of capital costs related to serving new development. And
You
so
one more time, John, the last part, referring to capital costs of what?
That are needed to serve new development.
Thank you.
Yep. So when you go through and impose an impact fee, you have to prepare a document just like what you have in existence and what you see on screen. And that document is called a public facilities needs assessment. And what that really entails is kind of going a little bit here, too far, is for each of these. So you have impact fees for water, transportation, library, police, fire, /EMS. What you're doing under state statute is taking an inventory of your existing facilities. So for example, for your water, within the context of a water impact fee, you're documenting wells and service, storage facilities, transmission main, distribution main, etc. And then you are defining the capital projects that you are looking to collect in whole or in part. And a lot of times it's partly impact fee eligible, some partly non-impact fee eligible, that you're looking to recover through an impact fee. From there has to be, and this study does a good job of kind of having a quantitative analysis for each of these facilities, defining the deficiency share and the growth share of the assets, the new assets that you are looking to construct. So, in the case of, say, a water impact fee, if you're looking at source of supply, you're looking at a new well or a storage facility, a tower, there's a series of mathematical analysis that you go through to say, evaluate the existing system with, say, your largest well out of service, and look at existing water usage compared to really water system needs on a peak day and a peak hour basis, and look at, do you have any existing deficiencies in the system? If you do, and we're adding a new well, for example, you then quantify of that new well, how much of it is needed to meet that existing deficiency, and the difference between meeting that, existing deficiency and what you're actually constructing in terms of well capacity goes to be collected through the imposition of an impact fee. Once you define the amount of facility costs that can be recovered through an impact fee, it's then a matter of taking that capital cost divided by the amount of growth that we have coming in to get to an impact fee per residential equivalent unit, or in the case of a non-residential customer, it might be based on meter size for water. For items like your police and fire, transportation, well, police, fire will stay with. A lot of times your non-residential impact fees will be based on the square footage of a building that is looking to be constructed. Whereas for single family residential development, you have just a general impact fee based on the home as a home. So, So for each of these, you have to do a needs assessment. It all goes into one document, but you have to do a needs assessment for each of these different facilities. And once that is done, you would then have to calculate the effect that these impact fees have on housing affordability within the village. And a lot of times what you're looking at is making some general assumptions on, the new home, say new home construction, assumptions on a down payment, where interest rates are, what the mortgage interest or monthly and annual mortgage payments would be, with and without impact fees being part of that analysis. So if, for example, it's assumed that an affordable house is $250,000 and the impact fees in total are $5,000, instead of financing $250,000 or that's your total cost, you'd be looking at $255,000. So making some assumptions on down payments, what does that mean in terms of how it would affect somebody's monthly mortgage payment?
Can I interrupt you for a second there?
Yeah.
On that, if you go to 5.1 on your needs assessment that you have in front of you there, page 10.
Page 10 on the hard copy?
No, page 10 on the hard copy.
Okay.
Where 5.1 says the recommended impact fees with estimated cost construction of 582,285 and 3,500 square foot addition. They're recommending 468. That was what was recommended for the library, correct? Because there was a library need assessment.
This is for the library.
What has to take place in order for that to happen? Was there meetings that needed to happen, or was there just the board had met and decided, hey, we know that we would like to add on to the village. I mean, to make this happen back in 2010 to generate that discussion, because it's just got on there that there's a library needs assessment. It was built in '93. This is where it's at. This is what they're expecting to have for an addition. So we're recommending this.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, in looking at the analysis, they relied upon service level standards from the Department of Public Instruction, DPI. And the state has some really good materials out there in terms of the size of different components of a library based on population or other metrics as applicable. So it looks like back in 2010, they relied upon those standards in terms of looking at the future to say you should have a library of X space. You have it right now. One study that we did an update for New Richmond, they had went a step further and actually had a space needs analysis done by another a consulting firm that had some specific recommendations on, hey, this is where the building should be. It should be this big. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. And the advantage to that is when you put an impact fee in place, and where a lot of communities, I think, over the years have had issue is putting an impact fee in place too early ahead of a capital project. And the reason I say that is under state statutes, you do have time limits on the amount of time you can collect impact fees and expend them before having to refund them. And it's generally about 8 years. And I think, a lot of times communities anticipating new development, and this is probably more late 90s, early 2000s to the mid 2000s when, a lot of municipalities were experiencing fair amounts of growth. They thought, hey, we know we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to, do something to the library eventually. We just don't know what that is yet. So we'll rely upon, maybe state standards to help make some, educated guesses on where we might need to go. And that's fine. But the thing with imposing an impact fee is you really are committed to kind of doing what you say you're going to do in the study. And if you don't, you do face having to refund those impact fees at some point in time. So nothing wrong with this type of an approach that you see, as it pertains to the library. But, if you, to the extent you have, say, an actual architectural study done, an engineering analysis, something that's, a little bit more concrete that you can hang your hat on. Personally, I think that's just a little bit, better approach, because it just tells everybody you're a little bit further down the road to saying yes to a project versus, maybe we will, maybe we won't, and then having to face refunding it later.
Well, and the library thing is a good example, because that was something that was put in here and it was funded and it got paid for. And now it's, we're past the point of that, that funding mechanism needed for that, because that was already done. So that was one of them that you're going to check off the box here. Police and fire and streets and water systems. I guess what I was looking at, and my question is, like, does a needs assessment have to be redone in those areas, or is it, and who does that? Is it this committee that would do that? Is it the department heads that review that stuff and make a recommendation, and then it comes to the village board for a needs assessment, or is it do you guys handle that? As far as drafting up our needs assessment and saying this is what based on what we're hearing, or what we're looking at from the village, because it's just and then does that have to go to public hearing and before it's approved? Or is it just something that gets approved by the village board and enacted? Because, we're hoping to get this revisited this year. I would like to at least see that updated. It's well past its time to get it done.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're talking 6 months of time here or 3 months of time.
Sure. So there were a lot of questions there. I'll try to handle them all as I kind of go through, and just let me know where I missed. In terms of updating the study, generally municipalities hire a firm like us to prepare the update to the needs assessment. And as part of that, we're definitely working with staff to go back through this last version of the study and, impact fee by impact fee. So say, the library, okay, this is what the study said, what has actually happened. If there's, the project has actually been done from the impact fee study, it's a matter of coming back and updating the costs that were in the study with actual costs if the project's been constructed, also updating all of the different assumptions that at that time were assumptions, they were estimates on size and the breakdown of the facility with the actual sizes, and then recalculating the impact fee, as well as coming back to the population and land use projections and recasting those as well. And that's also something we work pretty heavily with staff on, as well as relying on documents like your comprehensive plan, any other types of long range planning documents, that might be in existence that help project out future residential and non-residential growth projections. So that, as part of that needs assessment, we're going through and updating the study with what's actually happened since 2010. But then beyond that, for each of these facilities, say for example, water. Okay, water might have had a list of projects that were in 2010. Did some of these happen? Maybe some did, some didn't. But beyond that original list, what else is out there that might be impact fee eligible that you have, coming down the pipeline in the next 5 to 7 years that we might, want to look at adding to the list of projects here. And
Looking at a new water tower, we were just discussing it tonight. Our water tower is outdated and it's under capacity right now. And it's something that they're already, starting to look at, is whether or not we replace or refurbish our current one and build new. So that's something that's definitely, in our sights within the next 3 to 5 years.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, that's something like that, assuming that that is something you're going to move forward with. That is certainly something that could get added to the impact fee study, provided you're in a position to, from an engineer or staff, in terms of, we know the tower is going to be X size, with a certain capacity, and the dollar, estimated capital cost to construct this is whatever it is. So that's the other piece of it that gets built into the update of the public facilities needs assessment. Once that is all done, new impact fees get calculated, a new impact fee study document to replace this one gets published. So the requirements for implementation is, once this study is done, it has to get placed on file in the office of the clerk for a 20-day period of time. Then there is a public hearing that is required before you can make any updates that are needed to the existing impact fee ordinance. So most of the time that gets handled all in the same night. You have your public hearing as the first agenda item. Second agenda item is then the ordinance updates, and the board adopts or decides not to adopt as appropriate. In terms of working with this committee, that is really at your discretion, in terms of as the impact fee study gets to a point where it's in a final draft form, and then in a final document form, whether it would go to a committee before coming to the full village board. There's no statutory requirement that it has to go to a committee before the board. Really, the only statutory requirement is the ones I just outlined, in terms of placing it on file, conducting a public hearing before making any updates to the ordinance. So from a timing standpoint, could it be certainly done in 2024? Definitely, but it depends on a couple things. It really does depend on for the project list, especially if you're adding new projects, or there's things that like, for example, the tower project. We know the tower project is out there. We just don't really know cost-wise. We don't necessarily know the size of it yet, but we've got an engineer that's, say, working on that. Well, it might make sense to wait until that engineer is done with that analysis before you go and incorporate it into the impact fee study. So, if all of the information was, say, readily available for someone like us to work with, having an impact fee study done and gone through the public hearing process and adopted before summer is doable. So I hope that answered most of the questions. What did I miss?
Is it feasible to have it done by April? Before, and then you got a 20-day waiting period.
You do.
Public.
Yeah.
Huh?
You do have a 20-day period, right? Yeah.
Right.
To have
No,
study.
My question is it feasible to have the study done by April, and then you have your 20-day waiting period and your public hearing and adoption by, like, in May?
I would say tentatively it is. It just depends on the state of the data within each of these different impact fee components: library, police,
What would the
transportation.
cost be on something like that? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but would you be able to have something like that put together, updating this by next week for the village board meeting?
Scope of services to do this work?
Right.
What day is when's your board meeting?
Next Tuesday.
The 16th.
So you probably need items for the packet by Friday.
In theory.
Okay. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? Um,
His phone thought he said, "Hey Siri."
oh. All right. Yeah, I think that's doable. I'm gonna make Sean buy me a beer, but yes.
You should buy it too.
Yeah, right.
Not a $10 Boy Scouts.
It. A lot of the legwork has already kind of been done, with the exception of the fire, which is on our agenda for. I mean, we already had a needs assessment for, I guess, here's the other question I have for you. You know, I mean, I just made notes when we were talking here, so like public works, water towers, streets, improvements on streets, because our village is growing. We still haven't met the population numbers that have been outlined in that report, but I'm sure that could be updated and you know, put with new growth numbers to assess with our, you know, TIDs growing and expansions that we're looking at. We got 19 miles of roads already on the books, and we're looking to put another 5 to 7 miles of roads and structure on here that we need to pay for and provide for. And a lot of that's through the developers, but it's also maintenance and ongoing stuff that we're going to need to, you know, take assessment for. Public Works has got, you know, an outdated shedding system and stuff has seen its better life and might be looking at an upgrade in a different area to be able to handle the expanded streets and you know, stuff like that. The water bridge and you know, police is another one, and EMS, you know, I know they just were asking for a tender. What would they say, 1.6 million for a ladder truck that he was asking for, and we just spent a ton of money on a tender. So, you know, that most of the legwork has been done or has been, the real question is what's that cost going to be to put this together, and whether or not we can get it into this season, and we can afford to pay you guys to put it together. I know there's, I don't know, is there a portion of that can be incorporated into these impacts to pay for these studies going forward? I don't know.
You mean using your existing impact fee revenue that you have in the funds for each of these to help pay for the cost of updating it?
Yes.
You know, that's a question we've been asked before, and my recommendation on that would be to reach out to your auditor and ask them, because there's been times, to be honest, there's been times in the past where we've thought, yes, that seems like an eligible expense. It seems to be very similar, for example, where you've got active tax incremental financings, or tax incremental financing districts, and you've got annual reporting requirements. Those are, you know, certainly TID eligible expenses year in and year out. The same logic would seem to apply with impact fees, and we've had auditors come back and say, no, actually, we don't think you can use existing impact fee revenue to pay for the cost of updating the study. So at the risk of not getting you in trouble with your auditor, I would recommend reaching out and just asking them whether they feel that would be appropriate. To me, logically, it seems very similar to you know, some of the annual or amendments or TID administration type work. So it seems logical that you could, but I think checking with your auditor would be appropriate there.
Something, Andrea, you'd be able to ask of the auditor then, as to whether or not that would be eligible impact fee expense. Great. So you guys could have something together by next Tuesday to present to the board for that cost and timeline?
Yep.
And is it reasonable to say, after speaking, you know, that you'll reach out to the department heads to see if they can get the information to you so you can put together something by April?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from a timeline standpoint, we can get you a proposal that'll have all the necessary components. I would hesitate a little bit to put a timeline together until we know exactly what we're dealing with in terms of the data, but one of the first items that we do with an impact fee study is a kickoff meeting, which we would do, I think, hopefully with the department heads. And prior to that, we'll get some information on the state of your existing impact fees. And from that, we can put together a timeline that would look at, ideally getting this done by April. If not, we'll have to put something together that would be realistic.
And the last question I have, and I'll leave you alone, is so currently the impact fees are $1,940 for each building permit issued. If this was to go through and there was a public hearing and a 20-day period of time, and let's just say it was enacted in May, is there and there's 50 building permits, I'm just pulling a number out, 50 building permits that are pulled out in May at $1,940 because the new impact fees are, let's just say, $800 a month or $800 each more. Is that just because that's the arbitrary number? We have to go with that, or is there something to go back after those individuals, or how does that work on that? Because if you see the dam is breaking and you're going to have that additional cost, would they just say, well, let's buy the building permit now so we can save the cost on the impact fee later?
It was done before.
Is that what happened?
Mm-hmm.
So people see it coming and they just, oh boy, I'm doing it.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, under state statutes, you can't go back after the building permit has been pulled. But once that ordinance is updated and adopted, and you've had your public hearing, then the very next day, the new fee is in effect. Any other questions that I can help answer?
So anything else to add, John? Otherwise, there's nothing we can make a recommendation on. Just wait till it comes to the full board and see what that.
Oh yeah, we don't know what the cost is of him establish, or of them establishing that, or whether or not is there other companies that would do the same thing, or did Eller, you guys do that in the last one? I didn't even look to see.
No, I think it's SEH.
SEH was the one that did it last time.
Yeah, the 2010, the last one.
Yeah.
Yep.
So would it be best to finish our facility assessment first? I mean, that's a component of this needs impact study, right?
It's pretty much.
The facilities assessment was done with the exception of fire, I think, and that was what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
So everything else,
They
I think, is
actually
out
were
there.
going to bring it to Tuesday's meeting, but then the fire portion wasn't included. So that's going to the joint meeting, and then they'll bring the whole thing to the February meeting.
Gotcha. Okay.
So do we look for, do we go with, getting, other quotes from other firms too, so we can look at more than one, or are we just gonna say, Eller, send us a quote for doing this facility needs, and that's it, or is there other firms out here that we could reach out to possibly get us a quote for by Tuesday as well?
I don't know about by Tuesday.
Okay. Is there other firms out there?
Well, you could ask anybody. You could ask MSA, you could ask SEH, much anybody that works with impact fees.
Well, you're still gonna get that beer, Tom. John,
Yeah, well, two of them it sounds like, so that's good.
He's gonna get two.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're happy to get a proposal over by Tuesday, and if you if you wait and get other quotes, that's totally fine. Whatever you decide to do is fine.
Moving forward is what I'd like to do. I'd also like to make sure we have all, at least a couple different.
Let's see what they come in at Tuesday, and then we can decide. Get some other bids.
We reach out to MSA too and see if they might be willing to entertain putting together a scope and submittal.
Cause you guys have done most of the work, right, for the new impact fee with the buildings and that part of it's done. And as Short Elliott Hendrickson, are they still, I've never even heard of them, are they still around?
That's it, just all around. Yep.
You wanna reach out to them too?
But I'm not gonna do it till after Tuesday.
Well, I was referring to if Andrea wanted to just see if Andrea, would it be possible for you?
I've already done.
So we got those three, or you guys and MSA and the other ones that at least we asked. They say, hey, we can't get it to you by then the board can decide what they want to do after that.
Really good. Anything else from you guys?
So thanks for your patience. John, thank you so much for being able to join virtually.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And very nice meeting you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too, John.
You too.
Bye.
So we'll see you guys on Tuesday with the this topic as well as hopefully the application from the state.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Guys, have a good night.
9 C, discussion possible recommendation, Somerset Community Foundation Fund. Floor is yours, Tim.
Hello,
Hello.
thanks for adding this to your agenda.
Name and address, please, Kim.
Yep. Well, I'm Kim Dunleap. I live on Main Street, and I'm here because I am part of the Somerset Community Foundation. So the gist of this agenda item is asking the village to establish a fund, and the fund would actually be established with the St. Croix Valley Foundation. But you're going to need some backstory about why is this happening. But let me describe the relationship between the Somerset Community Foundation and the St. Croix Valley Foundation. The St. Croix Valley Foundation has 10 affiliates in this area. Somerset happens to be one of those affiliates. Some of the other affiliates is Stillwater, Nourishment, Amory, Prescott, and we all live underneath the umbrella of the St. Croix Valley Foundation. And the St. Croix Valley Foundation does like most of the administrative tasks for these different affiliates. I'm not sure if you need a little bit of background on what a community foundation is, but primarily and very simply, I'll describe how Somerset's runs. We have some endowed funds, and an endowed fund means someone has donated money to the community foundation, and that money cannot be spent. It goes into a fund, it's endowed. But the earnings of that fund can be spent. And so each year we get, the St. Croix Valley Foundation calculates what the earnings are and gives us that number. And then we have a competitive grant program where people can apply, tell us what they have a need for funding. And then we have a grant committee that has a scoring chart and decides how to divvy up the money that we have to the various people who have applied for those funds. We don't always fund every request, and we don't always fund the full need, but we try, based on our core mission statement, to match up what our mission statement is and get funds back out into the community to do good things. So that's the Somerset Community Foundation in a real nutshell.
That's taking the endowments, but you also have other, like the village, I think, donated some money to the foundation. Also, you were able to, you can spend those monies at any donations that are given to the foundation, right? You can spend without any requirements like the endowments, correct?
So we do have an account that we can spend money. It has it's kind of a small dollar amount. Most of the donations that come in go straight to that endowed fund.
Okay.
So the higher that the amount in the endowed fund is, the more it earns, then bringing that back, and that's the money that we can spend.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So now, how did this ask come to be? This really comes about with the electronic signs that are in the plans. So Dave Brock and a number of other people have put together a plan to put up 2 electronic signs. We'd really like to get 1 going, but there is a plan for 2. And I know that you probably have been prepped on that whole plan. Electronic sign that is going to feed information to the community. The estimate of what it costs for 1 sign is approximately $75,000. To date, about $50,000 has been raised. So there is an opportunity to apply for some grants, specifically from a local financial institution, but there's additional grants from foundations. The Anderson Foundation is a pretty well-known one, and there's a number of others in the area. So an application was made to this financial institution, and the response was, you're not a proper 501c3 organization. Mm-hmm. And their charter is that their donations can only go to an organization that holds that nonprofit designation. It makes it very easy for them. Then they don't have to vet that organization in other ways, like, are you making political contributions, or in a wild variety of other things. So that's why many people have a charter saying these are the only organizations that we will make a donation to. That is the core of the reason of asking the village to establish this fund with the St. Croix Valley Foundation, because then you can make application for grants and be able to say and submit documentation that would be going to an organization that is a nonprofit designated as a 501c3, which the St. Croix Valley Foundation is. So that is the whole purpose of establishing this fund. I should note that the library has a fund with the foundation, and they set that up. It's my understanding. I wasn't with the Somerset Community Foundation at the time that they set that up. It's been well over 10 years, something like that. And it's my understanding that they established that fund for this very purpose. And that it was...
Yeah, the village doesn't have anything to do with the libraries. And Christina's on here too, if she wants to add in, but
hi, Christina.
Somebody from I think it's Rita Lawson, she's the one that does all the stuff with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the purpose. So in your packet, there is an email from Heather Logelin. She's the president and CEO of the St. Croix Valley Foundation, and she laid out the steps to actually establish that fund. She created a draft of a fund agreement, and she put some specific language in there for the sign, like this fund would be for signage. If you want to make it more generic, so that the fund had a generic name and potentially could be used in the future for other such similar projects, that can easily be done. She said if you need anything changed on that fund agreement, she would be happy to do that. But there are some fees that are associated with this. They're all, and I should say that there are a couple of other options that we looked at, but the fees were all higher. And that's the primary reason why we went with this option. So there's a $300 setup fee that's charged once the fund is established, which is when you receive some money. So that $300 does not get assessed until you actually get that donation.
One-time fee?
Yes, $300 setup fee.
It's, in your packet, it's the second.
Got a $100 annual fee after that, though.
Right. If there's also a fee assessed quarterly on the assets that are in the fund, and there's a $100 annual fee. And that's for as long as the money is in that fund.
So you could close it out, you know, I mean, I guess what I'm asking, Ken, is are we looking to basically make this request until we can get enough money to do what you need to do as far as buying those 2 signs and maybe dissolve the account until we find something else, or keep it going into perpetuity?
Well, it might be nice to keep it going, but if there's no money in the account, there's no charge, there's no fees. Well,
What about the,
that might be inaccurate. There might be that $100
I
annual
think you
fee.
got still got the $100 annual fee, and
Yes, I think that,
1.5% assessed quarterly,
But
but that's only if there's money in that.
right,
Right.
that 1.5% would be assessed on the assets. So if the assets are 0, then it would be 0. But I think you are correct. It would be a $100 annual fee. So, you know, I'm also with the Somerset Champions, and of course there's a lot of projects that they would like to do. But if you read through Heather's email here, she also is saying that this isn't, this type of fund isn't really set up for, well, let's build a shelter and let's get some donations from the community. It's really established for those larger donations that come in, because the St. Croix Valley Foundation, they do all of the administrative tasks. And so what it costs them to handle every donation coming in is significant. That's why they charge these fees, right? And that's why this fund, this particular type of fund, is set up for those larger donations. So you might only end up getting 2 or 3 or 4 large donations, as opposed to a community run kind of let's all donate to this. You could have hundreds of people donate, and that's would be higher administrative costs, and that really, they have other funds to handle that.
but this could be more than just the signage.
Yes, it could, absolutely.
If we did the St. for Village of Somerset SCV Foundation Fund, so then it could be for whatever in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
A little more
Right.
open, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna limit it to just one specific.
So does Village of Somerset SCV Foundation Fund, would that work for everybody?
Well, because you got to set up as a fund known as Village Somerset Signage Fund. That's why I was asking, is a fund set up for specifically for the signs, or is this going to be something that's going to be for, you know, different projects other than that one into perpetuity? The way I see that, the way it was written and the way it was requested it was more just for the signs. And if you want it to be other than that, you know, then maybe we need to look at maybe changing the name or something, you know?
Yes, and so Heather took the information that she
Mhm.
was given and then drafted that document, but it says right in here that that document language can change easily. She'd be happy to do that. One question that I have for you, so how this would work is the donation would come into the St. Croix Valley Foundation, and then once we had enough, let's say to do the first sign, then the St. Croix Valley Foundation would then deliver those funds to the Village of Somerset, okay? Because the St. Croix Valley Foundation can't pay the vendor,
Mhm.
but the Village of Somerset can. So because this plan is already in process, there are some vendors who have given quotes, and it's those quotes and those things that the plan has been built on, and the total dollar price has been established. So now something that I just heard in the previous presentation, and so my question to you is, do you have a policy here at the village that if there is something that costs more than, let's say, $5,000, that you have to get 3 bids? Do you have a
Yeah.
policy? And so would you have to go out to bid on this?
If it goes through the board and the money that came in, unless it's earmarked, if it's earmarked, it might be
Yeah,
different.
I'll get back to you on
If
that.
it's
Let me
earmarked,
look
it
at
might be different.
Yeah. Because there are certain things that you don't have to do that on.
Okay,
And because it's technically not our project,
And not that.
we're just kind of the,
but the village actually is a
Overseers.
component of this project,
Okay.
because it's my understanding that the village would pay for the insurance that would cover the sign and would also pay the electric cost.
oh,
So that was my understanding. The village's component to,
I'll have to go back and look at that proposal, that day, I know Dave put it out there, but that was 2 months ago already.
yeah.
And a lot of things have changed.
I'll
Since then.
look at it before Tuesday.
So I hear what you're saying, that this really, and it wasn't developed by the village of Somerset,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
It was other, it was Dave's
Baby.
Lions Club, the
Oh,
chamber,
yeah, it was.
and a number of people who have all been working on this for quite a
What
while.
you're just looking for right now is you're looking for a vehicle
Exactly.
to basically accept the big donations so
Yes.
that you can make the request from the little guys to get the project done.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
And
that,
apply for grants that you're not eligible for because of the status
Yes,
of whichever organization is requesting.
that's correct.
I have one question, is, I know you had made like the request, or you had said, like Anderson, Foundation would make I shouldn't use them, but in theory, a foundation like that would not make a donation to, the Champions, or, the Lions is a 501c3.
They are not. They are not. They are a nonprofit, but they are designated as a different code.
Not a
So
C3, huh?
they're not a C3,
All right,
and neither is the chamber. The chamber is a nonprofit,
Right.
but they fall under a different section of that code, of the nonprofit code.
right.
So neither one, we tried.
Well, the
Neither one
501c3, I
was
think,
fit.
is an apolitical type,
Yes.
deal, if I remember right.
It is.
Is that you can't be political, you have to be in the middle.
And you can't make political donations, but there are other criteria that you have to follow as a 501c3.
You had a question?
I guess this was the first that I heard that the village would be paying for the electric. I don't think I have a problem with that, but so the one sign would be right at the edge of town. Right, coming into by the meadows,
That's the second location.
that's the second location,
Mhm.
but the first one is where the sign now is, where the meter is, right on 35
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And but that's not village property, is it?
It is not.
Mark,
It's Mark
Vanasse.
Vanasse, and Mark Vanasse has agreed to rent for $0 the land.
and will there be some kind of, what's easement kind of thing for future? I mean, cause if the village is gonna be on the hook and everybody's spending $150,000 on these signs, will there be easements in place for the future?
I'm sure some legal documents need to be drafted to make that happen. But I'll defer to Dave Brock on that one. And eventually, the idea is that there would be a third at the school, on school property. And they would all have the exact same information. There would be one feeding all three.
Gotcha.
The bylaws on this? assets of the fund after deducting expenses, be consistent with the purpose specified in the foundation's article and bylaws. But doesn't this fund have to have a set of foundation of operating bylaws as well? Or are they operating under the bylaws of
Under the village.
501c3?
Yes. Yep,
St. Croix Valley Foundation.
the St. Croix Valley Foundation, yes.
Do you have a copy of those bylaws?
I don't have them with me. But I'm sure I can get you a copy.
I would like to make the motion for the village to set up a fund called the Village of Somerset SCV Foundation Fund for the beginning purposes of the digital signs to be put in town, and then who knows what after that.
To clarify, does that mean the village will be applying for these grants?
You know, that's, I'm not 100% sure about that. Heather had said, should we move forward and we're ready to make application to that financial institution again, she would like to be involved in that application. So she will guide that as to the exact name. I think she put in here that it would be for the St. Croix Valley, funded to the St. Croix Valley Foundation. I think that's the wording that she had here somewhere. So she would be guiding that application process.
Well, once the funds have been set up, how do the funds get dispersed? Is that through village board action? And would there need to be an ordinance against that?
If it's earmarked, it just doesn't even need to go through the village board.
So, but it isn't earmarked. There could be other funds that would be going towards that.
Well, the money as it comes in from the foundation to the village would be earmarked for whatever the foundation says the village can spend it on.
And the foundation would be the community foundation would make the request to the Valley Foundation?
That's a good question. Would it be the community foundation or would it be the village to say we're ready for those funds to be dispersed?
Well, if the village is setting up the fund.
Yeah, I think it would be the
That's why
village.
I'm wondering if the ordinance, I think the village board would be. Pardon?
Christina, so when the library gets money from the foundation, St. Croix Valley Foundation, does the library board make that request or how does that work?
Yep. You get a spendable amount each year. That's the proceeds from the interest that you receive. And so that spendable amount is pretty easy to receive. You just fill out a form, it goes to them. It does not need to be approved by the St. Croix Valley Foundation Board if you're acting with those dollars. If you're going up, if you want to take out more money that's invested with them, you do need oversight from the St. Croix Valley Foundation Board, and they meet bi-monthly, so every other month.
So who makes that request if you want to?
If you are just, I think there's appointed people, if you're just using the spendable amount that can request those funds. I don't do it. But there's members of our board who are appointed to do that. But if you're going for a larger amount than what's that spendable amount is dictated, then you need to submit minutes from a board meeting. So then that would be your full board.
Or could it be from like finance committee, making a recommendation, or does it have to go to the full board?
I think that would be your full board again, because a recommendation, my understanding, isn't approved minutes. Like that's Heather would be able to tell you, but
all the decisions. I mean,
yeah,
But we probably should go through the finance committee first for review,
Mhm.
and then go through the full board.
Yeah.
Do I
But
need to-
now if you're doing it for grant income alone, like if you're going after the large grant funds, those grants, you're saying you cannot accept this unless you are going to spend it on this, on this project. And then you do grant reports and everything. So, I mean, I don't think that would need to be, that doesn't get approved because you can't take it. And that's what you're doing.
So what does I'm gonna just play devil's advocate here. Say you got a couple big corporations in town that throw, you know what, we had a banner year, and they put 100,000 each into this fund. And that's great, because now we got, you got $100,000 in there. And we don't spend it because we don't have any plans to spend it because we didn't know we were getting it. Now, you're saying you get like with our endowment at church, we get quarterly disbursements. I'm assuming that's what we get with the library board, or monthly, quarterly,
It's
whatever.
like 4% of what you have in there, I think
Okay.
is what it is, something like that.
And that money comes back to the library, and then you guys decide what you want to do with it without any, you don't need to go to the foundation with approval on that. It basically goes into your general accounting funds.
This year it is because I needed because I needed enough money to cover that, and it's actually going to be going into my general budget to pay for staff and books and those types of things. So yes, in previous years it's gone to building thing, for the facility. So there may have been a year or something where we didn't request anything from there, and so it just sits in there. And of course, the more money you have in there, the more money they're able to invest for you. And if the market is good, then you're going to make more money off of that.
But I think what Christina stated is, if you apply for a grant and say, we're asking for this grant to build this electronic sign, and somebody gives you money for that grant, it's already determined that this money is going to be used to build this sign.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I guess what I was worried about the grant aspect is more the quarterly disbursements really should have some kind of financial oversight. So if somebody doesn't say, you know what, we got this money coming in from the foundation, and now we wanna act,
I don't think there's quarterly disbursement.
No, but this
Yeah,
particular fund is
how
not.
much you can spend.
Pardon?
They send you a report of how much you can spend, not here's money.
Yeah, they don't give us
You have a
anything.
request to spend it.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
without some kind of a recommendation, from, finance committee to withdraw those funds for them expenditures. Hey, well, all of a sudden we got a road that we wanna, replace, so now let's pull that money out of the foundation,
Oh, no.
I think that, with the library board, we talk and talk about it before we would withdraw the money on it, and you plan and plan and plan. So it's not like a willy-nilly kind of thing. And I'm sure it wouldn't be with the village board either. It's just a nice thing to have too. Just this week, I was notified if somebody deposited $50 in there. I know it's not very much, but it's just like a little link that, they'll have a link to your fund on their website. People can donate from there. The village can have a link on their website. And if someone says, hey, I've got an extra $50 or whatever, and I see the village is doing some good things, I want to throw it in their kitty. And there's a guy that comes in and faxes every week. He doesn't have a lot of money. He'll donate to the library, $30 every month. So it's like, that means a lot to us. So it's good to have a place where people can put a little bit of something for their appreciation. And I'm sure you have good workers who people would want to recognize for, you know, for a little extra thank you. So.
Well, I totally agree with it. I'm trying to understand the mechanisms of the withdrawal and
Yeah.
everything that, you know.
It's all paperwork, and it's all being approved by it'd be approved by your village trustees, except for in the case of when you're accepting those grants. But you would be notified that you're accepting those grants on behalf of the Somerset Community or Foundation.
Has the foundation ever denied a grant if you had money in the endowment?
Denied a grant?
Yeah, if you had money in the endowment, you know, endowed within the foundation, have they ever denied a request for that money?
So which foundation? The St. Croix Valley Foundation?
I'm sorry, I apologize, I got my, the St. Croix Valley Foundation. Money's been put into that foundation, you ask for a grant from them. I know it says it has to do within the bylaws of the foundation articles, which I'm assuming you just have to fill out the paperwork, explain to them have they ever denied any?
I'm sure that there have been grants that have been grant requests that have come their way that they have said, we cannot do this. For, you know, and I'm sure there's a variety of reasons where they have been denied. I know that the Somerset Community Foundation, our competitive grant program, just even in our last cycle in 2023, I believe there were 2 that we said we cannot fund these, and it was due to the other ones scored higher as far as how much of an impact they would have in the Somerset community area and some of the other criteria that grant committee has developed in order to how to score these grant requests. So there were 2 that got 0 funding. But I do need to point out that we're talking about 2 very different funds. What Christina and the Public Library is using and the Somerset Community Foundation, there's endowed funds that has earnings. Those earnings can be then used, okay? The Somerset Community Foundation is using it for their competitive grant program. The fund that we're asking you to set up is not that type of fund. We're asking the village to establish a fund, and the primary reason for it is to use it as a vehicle to apply for donations that require a 50c3 nonprofit organization in order to get the funding and then use it. And in this particular case, why we're trying to get it established is to complete those electronic signs. It will get, whatever money comes into that fund will get invested. And that's why one of the attachments is the investment options. So it does get invested and hopefully then earn some money. But I have not seen anything here where you would be notified on a quarterly or annual basis of that earnings in order for you to use it in some capacity, because I believe that the fund is established for these electronic signs, and that's whatever money is there. I would think that you would want whatever earnings to use that to offset the fees, offset that $100 annual fee, offset that asset fee that is calculated on a quarterly basis.
Right. I guess what I was just concerned about is this language that's in the letter. It's because the undersigned acknowledges, under the provisions of the articles and bylaws, the foundation has the power and the duty to modify and any restriction or condition of the distribution of funds for any specific charitable purpose if, in the sole judgment of the foundation's board, without the approval of any participating trustee, custodian, or agent, such restrictions or conditions become, if in effect, unnecessary, incapable of fulfillment, or inconsistent with the charitable needs of the region served by the foundation. That's why I asked for the bylaws. I'd like to review them bylaws because I'm 100% for this. Don't get me wrong. I'm concerned about you guys going, great, we got all this money in there and we'd like to get it out. And they go, wait a minute now. You know, this goes against our bylaws. or, you know what I mean? And then, I mean, like,
So once the foundation gives the money to the village, their bylaws don't really matter anymore.
Correct.
That's not what I'm saying. It's once the money gets into the foundation, it's getting the money out of the foundation.
Right,
We don't
that's
have-
Donnie's concern, is that,
That's not our concern, is it though?
well,
Certainly is.
well, he has noted this under, number 8 in this letter. He has noted this, clause that could affect it. So let's ask Heather, I can ask Heather for the bylaws and I'll ask for some clarification on that clause.
And I mean, I just wanna make sure it's great that you got this avenue to do that. And it'll serve the purpose if there's never been any reason for them, or if they say, listen, we're gonna make this application, and they say, yeah, that's all within our bylaws and within there's not gonna be any restrictions, right? You know, I don't see any issue to it. Other than the
So
name.
I think if we ask her to clarify this clause and provide some examples of when it might come into play. How about that?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because that way we all can, I mean, the investment strategy and stuff that you're talking about paying the fees and everything, that all makes legitimate sense. I could see this going into perpetuity. But I'm more concerned about, well, I don't know, this doesn't conform with and they just hold on to the money, and then how do we get it out, you know?
I understand your concern. I will tell you that there's a lot of heavy lifting done before tonight, examining a variety of options and how they would all play out. And this one was chosen because that had the least amount of fees.
Sure.
And seemed to be the simplest.
I would like to amend my motion, amend my motion. For the village to still set up the fund known as the Village of Somerset SCV Foundation Fund. And any monies or anything that comes in to be reviewed on the Personnel and Finance Committee before going to the full board. So basically, I added what you were said into it. Is there a second? What's that?
So we have some oversight.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify one point? So my understanding is correct. The St. Croix Valley Foundation is a pooled endowment. And that means that proceeds from the interest are distributed to the lesser foundations, basically. And then that's what will be used to pay for this side.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No.
So now we're talking about, this is being set up as an agency non-endowed, and that means that the principal can be
Yes,
used?
it's non-endowed. That means the funds that come in can come back out.
Okay, this is the foundation that we're setting up.
This
Would
is
be
the
non-endowed.
fund
It's just a
type.
fund balance.
Yes,
They're using us, the village, as a vehicle to be able to put money in to a taxes exempt thing through grants or
large donations.
or donations from private vendors too. It doesn't have to be grants. And then the village with that fund can pay the vendors.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
We'll do it all the time for different sports things, and the library already does it.
All right.
So as I said, that Somerset is one of 10 affiliates underneath this umbrella. Most of the other affiliates, their municipalities have these funds for this very reason.
There's one.
I had a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any further discussion?
I just have to get clarification from the bylaws to ensure that we don't have any, we have a full understanding of this going in front of the board next Tuesday.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion unanimous. We go to the full board, so thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Andrea, can you get me a copy of that motion so that I send the exact titling of the account to Heather, and then I'll ask for that clarification, and I'm sure she'll respond tomorrow. I'll forward it on to Andrea so that she can get it to you.
Perfect. And I just did from SCV, from St. Croix Valley Foundation.
Yeah.
Fund. So that way it wasn't just stuck to.
But I just wanted to match the motion that's in the minutes.
Perfect.
I don't want to,
Then once that's been approved by the full board next week, then he would sign the letter requesting the adoption of the fund.
Yeah.
Good.
And things are,
Thanks for your heavy work
I
on
hear things are moving along very well for the signs.
it's nice, it's going to happen, we know it's going to
Yeah.
happen, so
Yeah.
this has taken a little sidestep here.
It's-
Well, hopefully we get both of them up.
Yeah.
It'd be nice,
Yes.
not just one, but we'll get them both up.
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so.
And then, yeah, another just a thing we'll have to do is we'll have to figure out our own ordinance and redo that. Not just for that sign, but for other signs too, so. Can you, I think we had somebody looking at model policy for digital signs, I think Tasia, can you just double check to see? What, model policy for city-owned, village-owned digital signs and otherwise? Perfect. Thank you so much, Kim.
So we probably are gonna have to come together as it gets closer to figure out the proper documents, like you talked about, potentially an easement from Mark Benoff, but all of the proper documents to make it happen.
Mhm.
That everybody is covered on what's gonna happen, but
Yeah, or at least a long-term lease or something, because
Something.
Mark could, you know, we could all drop over tomorrow or whatever, and Mark could sell the land, or the family could sell the land, and all of a sudden you're have no $75,000 paperweight.
right, thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. Good
Good
work on that too, by the way.
Before we do the minutes, can we do Christina's library report, since she's been waiting so patiently? You're up, Christina.
Yeah, you guys are working pretty hard tonight here.
Donnie's making us work hard, but that's good. God,
Lots of good questions. Got a fact find for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're going to talk about. Just on the top of the library report, you can see 3 materials that went out the most. So I just think it's always fun to see, like, hey, here's a book that went out to 43 different households in 2023. So you can see what Somerset is interested in reading and watching there. And then kind of an even funner, that last night we had the kids were invited to drop off their stuffed animals at the library for a sleepover. So I think there were about 14 stuffed animals from kids, but there was one adult who also dropped off their stuffed animal to sleep over. And then you can look at our Facebook page to see the pictures of what the animals were up to while they were being babysat by Mr. Daniel. And kind of on a more serious note, the police department came to the library in late December to do some active shooter training. That was very helpful for our staff. We're appreciative of them. Kind of pointed out some holes that we're going to see if we can fill for a little bit safer space for staff and the community to use the library. And then this is we just started our strategic plan, that community-driven strategic plan that there was that survey that went on last year. So it starts in 2024. So this is our first month. And we have more programs, and we have programs that are happening in the evening. That's some of the goals, because so many people are commuters in the community. So that's one of our goals. So we're starting the year out with that. So any questions about what's happening at the library, or any ideas or feedback that you would like to share? Meeting stuff tonight.
All good stuff though.
All good stuff.
I also wanted, when we were talking about the impact fees, I also wanted it just noted that 3% of the library's addition, it was like a very expensive addition, but just 3% of the addition was public funds. 97% of the funds were foundations, similar to what Kim was talking about, and community members. So
here's a question, as long as we're talking about that. Did that addition meet the guideline of the impact fees?
I'd have
Is
to
it-
look at that. I haven't measured it up against that as
I'm
of
not,
lately.
I wasn't familiar with the size of the addition or anything like that, but, do you happen to know what the square footage is of your building?
It's about 12,500.
And so what they were saying is that current building was, they said they would need a 3,529 square foot addition.
Yeah, so we're above that. After that, the library also did a feasibility report that came much more recent before the building was constructed.
Okay,
So
so you've
that's where
met, you've definitely met that, because you were at 3,100 square feet with the 3,500 square foot addition is what they were suggesting in there. So you've definitely met your needs and the impact.
right in that one. And so what we have now, we still have some impact fees that are collected. And so we do have a report based on the strategic plan that was created that projects those out for the deadline that they need to be spent. So things like that would be in that are, finishing the building. You put up the outside structure, but there's things that are inside it too that are needed just, to address the community growth as well. And one thing I really would like to have to serve the community more are book lockers. Have you ever seen those before? You put them outside a library. Several libraries have them. And so that people can get their library materials after the library is closed and when it's, 24 hours a day.
So are those accessible from the inside and outside? I've seen them on the exterior of, in Minneapolis, I believe I've seen them, but I didn't know if they were, so the librarians are putting the books in and basically, you go to it, you punch in a code and
you scan your library card. Yep. It's electronic based. You scan your library card and it on the kiosk, and then it's going to open up the corresponding locker to pop it open.
So they're accessible from one side by the librarian and on the other side by the public,
No, it's all, like not the ones that I've seen. I've never seen ones, but maybe there are ones that you could, I'm not looking at ones like that fancy, but it's just like the librarians go out there with a cart full of books and are accessing it. We're scanning our code and putting it in the same way too. So we'll see if we can make that happen here one of these days.
Anything else, Christina?
No.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, let's go back to the minutes from December 13th meeting.
we seem to be in order, make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a second.
First and a second, any discussion? You're none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Impact fee report.
If you notice from December to now, it's the same report. We didn't collect any,
47 for the year, huh?
yep,
I thought you had said that there was a couple that were coming in, that's why. After the
41 last year, does that sound right?
43.
43.
Yeah.
47.
A quick question on that report,
Mhm.
Andrea. Under the totals on the back page there, it said you got 28%, 46. Is that the percentage of the split of the total?
Mhm.
And that, so that all equates to 100% then?
Yep, and you're not seeing some of the hidden columns that you guys had me pick out, but, so then when the interest is applied, that's how the interest gets applied as well. For the account.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm not doing that, but I'm not. You got any questions?
Department head meeting report?
It is nothing to report.
Nothing to report. So it's been a couple months now since you guys have met.
Yeah.
When do you think you guys will meet again?
Probably, well, if you, decide to go with others for the impact fees study, we'll be meeting soon. With them, so.
2023 budget to date and fund balances.
Yeah, come down.
So Andrea, under recreation, we have planned contractual services.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So what does that include?
I actually sent you guys an email with the reason for that overage. And it was for the MSA to take over the company.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
The 25.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Normally it's MSA to review, like if CSN comes in, they'll do a review. That's normally what it is, but it went extremely over because of that added expense
Right.
from
Big project.
Yeah.
An important project. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just a quick question here. In 2023, the budget for public works went over by 68,000 over budget. How does that play out in the whole scheme of things? They were at they had 541,000 in their budget, but they were at 610,000 in expenses. Where would that 68,000, almost 69,000 come from then?
Well, I can tell you two things.
Or was that some of that come out of, do we have capital expenditures that was pulled from the?
31,000 of it is the Olson sanitation payment, which is collected money. So your revenue should also be over on the solid waste contract. Oh, refuse and recycling hauling revenues is over by $60,000. So that covers that overage. The other item of $35,000 is under street lighting outlays / improvements, which was the work to make all the street lights within Monument Street.
How much was that?
$35,000. So there's your two, almost $69,000, but over.
You said there was a 35,000 was from what? I apologize.
I thought
The
we,
streetlights
that we approved like 15.
on the, on Main Street.
We paid 15,000 for that.
That's the only item that is in that account. That's right here.
Which one are you on?
It's on page 4.
Like 120,000 overall.
Number 53420-820, street lighting outlay / improvements.
Five, 3, 2, 4, 0. What was the last one on it?
820.
820?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find that here. I'm not seeing it. There it is. Okay. The 35,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that bill was just approved.
That bill was paid, yeah. There were several of them. It was paid in December, so it would have been in your December meeting.
Huh?
It was paid in December. That first column on the budget is the December transactions.
Well, I got December transactions on here.
Oh, okay.
Some of that 33,000 from the lighting on the bridge, or the 35 project.
Mm-hmm.
All for our students.
Huh?
Yes, it was all for the streetlights. Yeah.
These 33,000 over here.
Looks nice. That's a good. Did we approve 15?
I wasn't at the meeting. So anything was approved or not approved. So I can.
That must have been paid before December 18th then. But I had the December 18th one.
Anything else on that, you guys? Down to discussion possible recommendation, ISG facility assessment agreement.
I emailed that to you guys, and I believe Bob emailed it as well, prior to that. It's 30 pages. I was not going to put it in the packet. And 4. And I do not recall why you wanted it on the agenda.
I thought we were going to be discussing adding the fire department onto that.
which is now going to the joint meeting. So,
I think putting the assessment the assessment agreement got on there, but that was before it was decided to move to it, right?
maybe,
So we going to the full board, we don't even need to table it, we just need to do nothing with it and it disappears. Anybody want to do anything or we let it disappear since it's going to the full board on Tuesday?
Well, the assessment agreement actually goes, the assessment agreement is including the fire, right? And I thought that's going to the joint board.
Yeah.
The joint board. Right?
yeah, on the
Not the village
24th.
board, right, okay. I'm fine with just tabling it till, or, you know, letting it go to the full board for, or the joint board for determination. Is the township, aware of that? Have they, they've been forwarded that facility needs assessment
I believe so.
along with the scope and the cost?
I'll check with you.
I believe so, I think that's why we put it on the joint. Discussion possible recommendation 2024 tuber user fee. That was a carryover from last month's meeting. Still
Did we get
waiting.
any numbers from the chief on that?
No, still waiting for numbers from the chief, so we can table that until he comes up with possible budget for 2024. And we're in a hurry.
So, one thing to keep in mind when we were doing the 2024 budget, this committee had me put $8,700 in revenue for the tubing user fee. So if you change that, that will affect the budget.
Of course, yeah. But like I said in my previous meetings, we don't want to be charging businesses for something
I
they're no
agree.
longer getting, so. We just to do it, make it right.
The
And
2024 budget had a surplus in there, right?
Okay.
There was a little bit of a surplus, not much, but there was a little bit of surplus. I mean, it was like $6,000, I believe.
Sure.
you know, if you
I'll
ever
check on
collected the other,
Well, yeah, because there was no increase in the trustees' pay that was supposed to be
it.
allocated.
And I put it back
Right.
to where I took it from.
Right. Okay,
So and that's on the expense side. I'm talking the revenue side. You had me put 8,700 in as a revenue.
Right.
That we will collect.
but there was still a surplus at the end of that budget. So even if there was a drop, if there was a reduction, there would have to be a reduction on the cost of services provided as well, because that's the whole
All I'm
reason.
saying, Donnie, is what it says for budget to collect in revenue will not be what is in the budget if you change that fee.
possibly,
That's all I'm saying.
yeah, possibly.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it would be less being expended in services provided if we were to reduce that cost. Because that was the whole purpose of charging that, was to provide services.
As stated in the ordinance, yes, there are fees that are associated with it,
So there would be a reduction there too. There would need to be.
not necessarily.
Wages have gone up, things have changed, you know, it'll be interesting to see what he comes in on. I'm guessing it's gonna be quite a bit less,
Did you
but.
make a motion to table that, or was it just filler?
I made a motion to table it until we get the information back from the chief. And move forward.
Okay.
For a second, in motion second, discussion,
The only discussion I have is how long is that going to take? If we get into, 2 or 3 months down the road and we're still waiting for those numbers.
I think with, I
I'm
talked
not
to
saying
Joel.
that, not saying that he's gonna be that way, but do we wanna just table it until we get the numbers, or you wanna put that caveat on there?
I think I'm meeting with him on Monday, but he wasn't sure on what to do, so I said, hey, just do busy Saturdays, starting the weekend before 4th of July, the holiday, and end the second week of August when it's been busy, and just do, those Saturday for an extra hour that would only cover the extra tubing time, if he keeps an officer on past tubing hours, then that's not covered by the tubing places. So I gave him some fairly easy parameters or criteria. He was gonna put something together. And the thing is, if they don't complain about it, if the tubing places don't want to really change it, then they want to get charged more, pay more than they're actually benefiting, that's up to them. That's they've been emailed and notified about it, so I would assume they want to try to save money, but they won't know, just like we won't know until the chief comes up with something for us to look at. Future agenda items. I had a couple things that I wanted to get on this agenda, but it just didn't come together, so it'll go to the full board. The village received an email letter from the village court attorney after our budgets and everything were done, basically adding an extra $100 an hour to her charge starting February 1st. That I've been working with Judge Nemec and Colleen, his ability courts, to find a suitable replacement. It sounds like we have a tentative yes, but no contract quite yet, but it'll save a ton of money, and it's somebody that they'd be happy with. So that will come to the full village board on Tuesday. I've been meeting a lot with Bob Gunther.
Normally get appointed by the board?
What's that?
The court attorney?
It's
appointed by the board?
Supposed to get appointed by the village president, and then
I thought just the village attorney, the court is separate. Cause I don't think she's listed on in our ordinance.
yeah,
Check into that.
Yeah, I will. Sorry.
but so we're ready to possibly make the change on Tuesday, and we'll have that information. Been working with Bob quite a bit on needs of the village. Of right now, our major players might even, they're busting at the seams and might have to find new communities to go to unless we can start to find more land to put industrial parks and commercial properties on. So his idea, and I thought it's a great idea, but there's already an ordinance in place to be able to set up an economic development committee. Bob sent me some sample ordinance stuff that I'll send out to
So that'll be on the next agenda.
that'll be on the next agenda.
For finance or village board?
For village board.
Okay,
we'll
so
put it
this
on.
isn't future.
No,
finance.
these
Okay.
are just, this
Right.
is just.
Oh, that's
talking
village
points.
board you want?
For
Economic
village
development?
board, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because this is something we want to move kind of quick on, because there's a lot of possible future growth to the north that we need to start working on, and this is a way to get some of the heavy hitters on a committee type together. Bob is reaching out to some guys that would really be pretty influential. They'll be able to make some things happen. Otherwise, we could lose even like SMC. We could lose Big Bad Toy Store right now. We need to really make this a priority of annexing more property in.
Anything else?
That's it.
Under future agenda items, I'd like to see us I know on an annual basis, we usually do department head reviews. You guys have not been involved in that process before, but that was something that I've
Should
been
be
in.
personal finance.
I'm saying you guys weren't because you weren't on the board. Now, I was the only one that's on there. The other two have flipped out, so I believe we got the,
Choice of words then.
Not really.
I could use something else, but the other, I believe we got the, reviews that you guys had, had a chance to, you know, give your input. You
The
have,
self-evaluation.
yeah, the self-evaluations, and you guys usually get them and have a chance for them to be done by you guys, and then I would suggest that we, you know, carve out a special amount of time to do that. And,
Last time it wasn't during the regular meeting.
right,
You guys set up a special thing.
that's what I was saying, but we had to have a special meeting for that, right?
Mhm.
Probably, I'm guessing February, March and April would probably be the best months to tackle that.
It was done in March. So the reviews, the stuff, I remember we sat down in March and it was all done before elections and everything were all done.
So can we, shoot for February, March to. How does that work? Do we get the self-evaluation
Well,
back and then set up?
they've done it in a couple different ways. They've done it where
I'll
each
send you the
individual,
policy.
Good.
we can discuss it, you know, under an agenda item next month, how you want to do it, but I know they've done it where they had independent evals, you know, evaluations done on, you know, person to person, and this last year was a group evaluation that I was involved with. In other words, all three of us just had an evaluation. I don't know what your opinion was on that, and we could talk about it next month, you know, under agenda.
Send out the policy when you get a chance, and then let's go from there. But that's great to bring up. So, and then you have that as an agenda item?
Yeah.
Perfect. That way we can keep on top of it and just get them busted out. Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting concluded at 9:21 PM. Yep, thank you guys. You talk a lot, man. You did good. Nice job.